of Friday. What's up? What's happening? Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony Haney, super producer there. I'm Craig Hoffman. And Anthony, are we going to have to retire that hour opener from Brooke Pryor when that Josh Harris sale goes through?
I think so. It's very fitting for us to, do away with it because we won't need it anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll be sleeping well at night as well.
Yeah, which will be great. I'm enjoying the idea of sleeping. Sleeping sounds great. Not going to wake up to an ESPN story, at least one that's urgent.
Exactly.
But I also feel like we should put it in a use sparingly for posterity's sake. Like, remember when we had to deal with that? Look at the freedom we enjoy now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the freedom we enjoy now. Great show. At least that's the plan on a Friday. Who knows? It's a Friday. Sometimes things get weird. But we got NBA Finals talk to start. And, man, you want to talk about just a make-or-miss league kind of game. And the Nuggets are fantastic. We knew that going in. The Heat are tough as nails. We knew that going in. But, Anthony, what did I say yesterday? This game is going to come down to whether or not the Heat make shots at their Eastern Conference Finals playoff clip or their regular season clip. And they, unfortunately for them, shot very much like it was the regular season. And as a result, well, they lost. They lose by 11. The number was 9. That got real dicey there at the end for folks who had decided to put a couple dollars down. But it wasn't until the fourth quarter that they really were able to find any kind of consistent scoring. Bam was great. We can get into some of what I saw from him that I really like. I thought it was interesting. Miami just said, screw it, we're going zone in the fourth quarter to keep Duncan Robinson on the floor, and it actually worked way better than anyone anticipated. But it really comes down to the fact that, like, Max Strus took a lot of great shots that they absolutely want him to take, and he should take again. And he made 0 of them. And Caleb Martin, who was damn near the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, made not many more. Gabe Vincent was good, but Butler missed some shots, that he normally makes or that he made in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's kind of the game. I mean, Denver was Denver. And the question is going to be if Miami can score with Denver, and it's going to take the Max Strus making, thing is, like, they won by 11. If Max Strus goes 4 of 10 and it's 4 of 9 from 3, which is a good game. Let's say he hits 3 of 9, and then Caleb Martin is not awful. Miami's right there. And so who knows how it gets down the stretch. It's not like you just add the points. It becomes a different game. But I do think that if I'm Miami, I come out of this game encouraged, even though I lost. That said, if I'm Denver, I also come out of this game encouraged because I see some of the things that they're going to try to do. I feel confident in my ability to make some adjustments. And I also feel like some of the things that Denver did to get up in this game are things that Miami is just kind of stuck on. Caleb Martin can't grow, and that's a problem for Miami. They're just small. Van Gundy put it really well on the broadcast last night. Like, they are small at almost every position outside of Butler. They are just a small basketball team that makes up for it with toughness, guile, and intellect. And they've now met a team that is as tough, as smart, and as skilled as they are. And I think that is ultimately why I and most other people, you as well, picked Denver in 5 games. Although you did pick Miami last night. How'd that go for you?
It didn't go as I planned it to go.
Yeah.
Miami just looked really small out there, Craig. Like, from the jump. And I think part of that is because Eric Spoelstra decided to go with, the small ball lineup that they use against the Celtics. And I'm not going to lie, Craig. I think if they go with that plan again, it's going to work out for them. So I'm expecting them to definitely make some changes to the lineup, go a little bit bigger. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Love goes back to the starting lineup because he was starting in the first 2 series. And then when they played the Celtics, they made some lineup changes. So, the Nuggets were just too big for those guys. And I think the plan to start was probably allow Jokic to beat you. But when you got 6-foot Gabe Vincent guarding Aaron Gordon, what should the Nuggets do? Obviously go inside. And I think the Nuggets just did a great job, combating everything that the Miami Heat threw at them. When Aaron Gordon got going, they put Jimmy Butler on him, and then it was Jamal Murray's turn, and then it was Michael Porter's turn, and things of that nature. So literally, they just took whatever Miami gave to them, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah, they did, and that's the thing is, who do you like? What do you do? Do you take? I guess your best bet is probably what you said. Put Kevin Love back in the starting lineup. I mean, people forget that Caleb Martin was a bench player for them for most of the year. Mm-hmm. And I think you kind of have to go back to that because Aaron Gordon is too big, too skilled. I mean, Gordon, we've talked about him in the playoffs quite a bit, but, he's a guy that I think people forget was a number 2 overall pick. He's so transformed his game from what people thought he was going to be, probably what he frankly thought he was going to be coming into the league. And it's a credit to him. It's a situation where, you figure out, okay, how am I gonna best stay in this league and thrive in it? And he figured it out, which was saying like, no, okay, I'm not gonna be an offensive player. I'm gonna be someone who, is a defensive stopper, rebounder, and all of those types of things. And as a result, he's found a winning spot on a roster in Denver. And he's as big a reason they won last night as Murray, who was awesome, as Jokic, because they just made Miami take a long time to figure out, like, how do we manage this? And I don't know that they necessarily even came up with a great answer. Like, that's kind of the wild part of it is it's not like Miami. I think they come out of that game feeling good because they come out of that game feeling good because if they just hit shots, they're right there. They're in it. But they also come out of that game going, now that Denver knows what we're doing and how we're going to match it, they got all the adjustments in the world to make. What are we going to do about it? And so it's a tough spot, man. Like, it hasn't, let me put it this way, it hasn't changed what I think of the series. We can take some calls on that next. Did game 1 change what you think in this series at all? 301-230-0980. But like, I think Love makes them so much worse defensively that you have to limit his minutes. But if you can get, that 6 minutes at the start of each half that Aaron Gordon can't have 14 points in the first quarter, I don't think he got quite that much, but he was double digits in the first quarter.
Yeah, he was.
If he can get, you can prevent that, keep it close, then I think you're in better shape.
But would you not want to lean on a guy like Kevin Love that has championship experience, that has that pedigree, that knows what it takes, that's been in these situations before, to, at least put him out there? Like,
no, I would, but like it opens up another can of worms. Yeah. And this is the kind of stuff that happens in the finals too. Like, here's a wild ass idea. Do you put Love and Robinson on the floor together and just play zone? Like, do you try to get Kevin Love minutes there? Right? I think you probably do it to start and try to match Gordon's minutes a little bit and minimize those minutes. Because that's the thing. Is like Caleb Martin in the Boston series, it was one of the losses. I think it was game 5. Maybe it was game 6. I think it was game 5. He had 15 rebounds. Like, he can play forward, but he can't play power forward against Aaron Gordon. Like, that's a different ask than saying, hey, Jaylen Brown's at the 4 or Jason Tatum's at the 4. Go play with them. Because those guys are perimeter oriented. A guy like Gordon who's going to get, like, say, I got a 6'5" guy on me who's not that big. Like, he's not Charles Barkley 6'5". He's like guard 6'5". He's just going to punish him.
Yeah. But also,
Anthony almost just fell out of his chair.
I don't know what just happened. I think also a pro to having Kevin Love on the floor, he can also stretch the floor and shoot it, though. So Jokic isn't, just in the paint all the time. And personally, I would put K-Love on Jokic just to, like, bang with him, to be honest. I don't think, putting Bam on him did anything for real. He had to work a little bit, but I don't think the Miami Heat have one player on their roster that's going to be able to slow Jokic down. So I think allow Kevin Love to, bang with him. Bam, can stay out of foul trouble and, also defend Aaron Gordon. I just think those are, like, better matchups on the defensive end for those guys.
So here's the counterpoint. Because I think you're right. Like, the thing that screws up Kevin Love is, like, you get a quick guy and he's just going to blow past him, right? And to your point, like, Bam only does so much. The problem is they then put Jokic in the pick and roll as a screener, and they get Kevin Love switched on Jamal Murray a bunch, and now you're really dead. So it's too easy of a solution in a lot of ways for Denver, is they just say, okay, we're going to put Jokic Murray pick and roll, and whether you run it with Murray as the ball handler or you invert it and make Love defend a driving Jokic and, see what happens there. I still think you probably just have Murray be the ball handler and try to get the switch, and then Jokic runs away, and now you're in a rotation situation. And the other thing is, like, when LA did that, similar concept, right? It's like, well, Anthony Davis is only going to do so much. Maybe we take him off of Jokic and put him somewhere else. Anthony Davis is one of the best weak side help defenders in the league, right? If you get past your guy and Anthony Davis, you don't know where he is, you got to find him, because otherwise he's going to appear out of nowhere and block your shot. So if that's the case, you're terrified. That's not Bam Adebayo. Bam is not he's a great defender, but he's not a shot blocker in the same way, not the rim protector type of guy. So having him roam and kind of play off Aaron Gordon, it does prevent Gordon from becoming the problem that he is. And I think after game one, you have to consider that as a potential, an actual potential problem to be solved if you're Miami. Yeah. At the same time, it doesn't have the same effect as, like, taking Anthony Davis or Rudy Gobert or one of the premier Joel Embiid, a premier shot blocker, and having him kind of roam and patrol the lane. So I think it's worth it. I think if Caleb Martin's out there, they're in deep trouble. Caleb Martin out there on Gordon, right? Yeah. And just giving Denver less. Like, Denver wants to get you to switch and get the ball moving and get guys cutting all over the place and cause confusion. They did a great job last night getting out in transition, causing switches, and that's how they got some of that stuff. And what Caleb Martin's plan was not to guard Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon found him in transition and buried him under the rim. Mm-hmm. And so if you can create less of that by having more size on the floor, that's obviously a good solution. In theory, but I don't know that Miami has the players to do that. Love is going to have to play. He and Udonis Haslem are the only two dudes that didn't play in game one. I do think we see Kevin Love return to the starting lineup in game two. That's Sunday. We'll continue to talk about this. Some more thoughts on the NBA Finals. Take Command coming up at 4:30. Thoughts from Logan on Sam Howell and Emmanuel Forbes, so you don't want to miss that. Anthony is going to make sure that his chair is fixed and he doesn't look like a small child who got stuck at the adults table. So that's all still to come on The Hoffman Show, Team 980, the free Odyssey app, and streaming live at youtube.com/@theteam980.
Daniel Snyder has agreed to...
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well. Anthony, I just checked the stream, just, quality control check. We look great today. We look so good. Look at us. We're still primarily an audio platform. You have to speak.
That's good news, man. That's very good news on this Friday.
Yeah, the life we deserve, you might say.
The life we simply deserve, brother.
We'll get to take command. Thoughts from Logan Paulson on Emmanuel Forbes and Sam Howell coming up at the bottom of the hour. Who's joining us at 5 today? Who we got? Oh, Josh Robbins.
We got my man Josh.
Yeah, Josh Robbins at 5 o'clock today. Wizards have made another hire that I like a lot. A guy that I thought they might hire, but not in the position, which is kind of amazing. Pretty psyched about it. We'll talk to Josh Robbins about it coming up at the top of the hour. But more thoughts on the NBA Finals now, and one more thought on the Denver offense, Miami defense side of it, and then let's dive into how Miami can fix their offense. The zone worked better than I thought it would, and better than everyone thought it would, and better than the numbers suggested that it would. Let's not pretend like we didn't have some data on this. The Heat during the season averaged 1.2 points per 1.2 points per possession. 1.2 points per 100 possessions would be terrible. That, Anthony, that is like if you and I played 2-on-5 against a court full of NBA players. We got 100 tries. Could we score 1.2 points? No. Probably not. Probably not. We would be at 0.0 points per 100 possessions. They scored 1.2 points per possession, a.k.a. 120 points per 100 possessions during the season against zone. Why? Because Nikola Jokic is the greatest offensive force on the planet, and he's 7 feet tall, and he's the best passer on the planet, and he can shoot, and so he's the literal perfect guy to sit in the middle of the zone. Also, they do have another guy who's good in the middle of the zone, and Anthony, I didn't realize it until last night when I had an instant flashback nightmare to college, and that guy is Jeff Green.
Yes, sir.
He's played against a 2-3 zone in his day back in Georgetown against Syracuse in the Big East.
Yep.
May it
when
rest
it was the Big East.
Yeah, may it rest in peace.
Yes.
But they just have a bunch of guys who are like tall, skilled playmakers who aren't afraid to shoot, and that's exactly what you want. But what the Miami zone did do last night was take them out of the Murray-Jokic two-man game and they did stagnate a little bit. Like it just disrupted the rhythm. And they played zone most of that fourth quarter because they needed Duncan Robinson out there to shoot, and that's kind of what they do. If Robinson's in the game, they play zone because they don't trust him to play man, and they need his shooting on the floor. And so as a result, Denver throws down a 20-point fourth quarter, easily their worst of the game, one of their worst, if not their single worst in all of the playoffs. So I do think you will see more Miami zone. However, I think that is probably the big coaching point for Michael Malone coming out of this, is to be like, hey, when we get zone, this is how we beat it. Like, we got to be us. We can't be stagnant. We can't play 4 out around Jokic at the free throw line. Like, we can play that way, but it's not our best way. What some other things that I think they did that were smart that they can do more of, like there was one point where Jeff Green got the ball in the left corner, and that was Robinson's zone, if you will. It was his spot, and Green just backed him down. He's like, okay, we're going to turn this into a man-to-man situation, and he backed him down basically. It was like a half drive to get to the 17, 18-foot point on the block extended, and then just backed him down into the lane, shot a little jump hook, 2 points Nuggets, 2 of the 20 they had in the quarter. So I think that there's more stuff like that where they may post Jokic up in the corner and let him kind of drive off that. You put some guys in different spots. Like, I think there are obvious ways to beat it. Michael Malone's very smart. I don't think it'll be super effective, but if it's enough to disrupt the rhythm and they say, hey, we can do this while Jokic is on the floor, I think that's something to watch in the games moving forward. As for the Denver defense, like, they did well enough. I think that you could tell the shots were not as rhythmic and easy. Miami was far less comfortable than they were against Boston, but they still got a ton of open looks. And really, Anthony, it does kind of come down to, like, they just got to hit shots. And, like, Max Strus was 0 for 9 from 3. But if I'm Eric Spoelstra, I tell Max Strus, I want you to take every single one of those 9 shots. I don't feel like he took a bad shot all game. I might be forgetting one, but I don't feel like he took a bad one. And then, like Jimmy Butler said afterwards, and like the stat sheet obviously suggests, they have got to get to the free throw line more. They're not going to live shooting 2 free throws on the game. Highsmith made them both. Good for him. He was one of their best last night, had 18 points in 23 minutes. But I think if Butler can get downhill more, get him in the post a little bit more, and obviously Caleb Martin, a guy who's been great attacking the rim in the postseason, I think Miami can make this really interesting. And the last thing I'll say, Ant, too, before I get your thoughts real quick, like, I loved Bam's game. It's kind of like teams dare big guys to shoot, and Bam was like, fine, I'll shoot. And he just hit a bunch of 15-footers, hit these runners. He's got to take them. 13 to 25, like, I'm fine with Bam Adebayo taking 25 shots for this team. And I think that confidence from Bam is a good sign for Miami moving forward.
It's a great sign. I think everybody's been expecting this, part of Bam's games to, grow and evolve since he entered the league. Yes, we know you can, catch oops and, dunk the basketball, but what else will you be able to offer outside of defense? And hitting mid-range consistently has to be a part of his game, so it was good definitely to see him taking those shots. But Jimmy Butler also has to be a little bit more aggressive, as you already alluded to. 2 free throw attempts. Jimmy Butler lives at the free throw line. Like, he made that a very huge part of his game in the Celtics series. And for him to not go out there and be as aggressive, maybe it's because of the size of the Nuggets. Aaron Gordon is a little bit bigger. You also got Michael Porter Williams. You also have Jokic protecting the rim. So it might have been a little bit more challenging, but still, you're the head of the snake, dog. We're only going to go as far as you take us.
Here's the thing with Butler, too. He seems like he's afraid of getting his shot blocked.
Yep.
Like, the 2-foot jump stop in the lane thing has got to stop. Like, you just have to go up and take the contact. He's a good free throw shooter. It's very bizarre. Like, he's a good free throw shooter who wants to get to the free throw line, and he always just goes for that pump fake, and, like, people are onto it. He's got to just get into the lane, go up strong, jump into guys' bodies, force the issue with the officials. If you get some no calls, fine, but you're probably going to get a lot of those calls. So I think that's kind of the recipe for Butler, is like, go in off of 1 foot, or if you want to be a 2-foot jumper, fine, but like, you got to get in there and go. You can't pump fake. They're too long. They're too disciplined. They're too athletic. They're going to jump with you. And you saw him get, I mean, he had like 11 or 12 shots blocked in the Boston series. That's crazy. They had multiple shots blocked per game. And last night had a couple as well. So I think that's a huge change that Jimmy's just got to go. And you have to wonder if he's wearing down with the incredible load he's taken on in this playoffs and if that's a part of it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, you will hear thoughts from Logan Paulson on Emmanuel Forbes and the one and only Sam Howell. That's next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Josh Robbins coming up at the top of the hour to talk about the Wizards hiring of Travis Schank, former Golden State and Atlanta executive. And obviously we'll get his thoughts on Michael Winger, where they could be going at GM, and kind of what the read of the room is on Porzingis, Kuzma, and Beal, as all three could be on the move this offseason. As for right now, Sam Howell continuing as QB1 during training camp, and unfortunately for him, he's finding Emmanuel Forbes a lot, not necessarily for picks, but Forbes been in on a lot of action. So on this latest edition of Take Command, which we recorded yesterday morning, available now in full on all your favorite audio and video platforms. Well, I guess as long as your favorite video platform is YouTube. Available now wherever you get your podcasts. We talked about Hal. We talked about Forbes. We talked about the OTA in general. And we also talked about something that was pretty innovative, or not, I wouldn't say innovative. Maybe that's not the right word. Something that was super interesting, something that's different. They're miking up Sam Howell at practice. We talked about that in the full episode. But in the part we'll play for you right now, just some thoughts on Howell, thoughts on Forbes, a Take Command Friday for you here on The Hoffman Show. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. Let's talk about Sam Howell and the day he had yesterday. I don't know if you got a chance to skim practice from Tuesday as well. Yesterday, I feel like was a pretty mixed bag for Sam. I felt like he really struggled to read the middle of the field in a lot of places where he got in trouble. A lot of the batted balls, the pick he threw that got tipped by Quan Martin and picked by Cody Barton. I think that was in... Was that 7-on-7? Might have been in team.
I watched both the practices back to back, Tuesday and Wednesday, so they're kind of just mushed. But
yeah. So he had a pick that was over the middle, and just a lot of balls that either would have been picked or would have caused massive collisions over the middle of the field. But he's also, doing the Sam Howell stuff where he has beautiful ball down the sideline. And like when he just knows, like, I've got the coverage look. And I think that's the thing that you start to notice is like when he's certain of the coverage and he knows he can take his shots, like he delivers. But, that certainty is not always going to turn out to be correct. That's the nature of the NFL. And that's going to happen once every couple of drives that you have the ability to take a shot like that. You've got to execute the basics of the offense, the short stuff, the quick game. And that is where I think he, at least yesterday, seemed to struggle a little bit. That was my takeaway from the sideline, getting to watch it all live one time. You got to watch the film. What did you see when you saw Howell, not only yesterday, but on Tuesday?
Yeah, so I think I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I think you're seeing kind of some of the growing pains that Sam's having in the offense. But just as an example, just as a very simple example, they're in a bunch to the left in 7-on-7, right? And the outside guy's got a dig, the inside guy's got the middle guy, the guy on the ball has a go, and the third guy, Logan Thomas, has a sit to an out, right? And so one of the things is the defense is matched with 4 coverage players over this bunch. And when you have the 4 coverage players over the bunch, you have to understand kind of, and this is where game planning comes in, how I want to manipulate those 4 coverage players. So they're running this go, and that's going to take out the top coverage player, and it's going to open up the dig. The outside corner is going to match the dig and be chasing in a trail position, right? Logan Thomas now has 2 people to run this kind of option out route on. In a game plan situation, if you're game planning for this defense, you're going to ask Logan Thomas to stem in and attack the inside defender, who I think is Cody Barton in this case, and then run out and try to bring him with him to create a throwing window for Sam. Unfortunately, you're not game planning for your defense. So Logan runs straight and he runs out, not understanding, and it's not his fault because they're not talking about it probably, and then running out. So the outside coverage player matches Logan. Cody Barton just stays in the throwing window, and then Sam has to kind of deliver a perfect throw on that coverage, right? So if you're coaching that coverage, if you're coaching that concept versus that coverage, you're going to run a little differently. And I think that's what you're starting to see now is the defense, is just doing a really good job of matching concepts. And we'll talk about Forbes and some of these other guys in a minute. But the throwing windows are so much tighter. They're not, so for another example, right? So you're running a go on the outside and you're running a corner by number 2. And then you're running a flat coming across the middle by number 3. So you get like a nice 3-level throw. You want that corner to carry that go, right? But they're getting so good now in the back end of passing it off. So they ran that concept yesterday, right? The ball should be going to the corner based on coverage. It was like a quarters look. Instead of Fuller running with the go and then Percy Butler attacking that corner outside in, they just exchanged it. And so Percy ran with the go and Fuller sat on the corner, and there's no place to go with the football. And it's just, they are doing a really good job of matching these concepts, which again are not game plan specific concept. Because if you know that that's going to happen, you're going to basically say, we're going to run a deep post by number or deep corner by number 1 and a corner by number 2. And then you're getting a corner on a guy with outside leverage. So you're not going to run that concept if that's how they're going to play that. And so I think some of his struggles, some of Sam's struggles are definitely correlated to the defense playing better and these windows getting incredibly tight. And we're also getting into a little bit, in the team period yesterday was a little bit more kind of shot type plays, which are tough. especially if they're off of play action and the defense knows you're not going to run the football. Because as we talked about, they're not running the football in this training camp or in this
Right.
OTA period. They're not doing it. So all of the benefit of play action, all of kind of the pull and the movement you get off of that, it's not here because you're not running the ball. So some of that stuff is definitely true. Sam is definitely having a hard time. He's holding the ball a little bit longer or whatever. But I also think the defense deserves a ton of credit for understanding these concepts and how to match these concepts really well. And the young guys in the back end are doing a really nice job, really, really nice job. So, and even on the completions, man, the throws are so tight. Like yesterday, there was a throw where Terry's running a 15-yard in cut. So basically like a dig, like a speed dig at 15.
Mm-hmm.
Sam does a good job working to the left. The ball's got to go to Terry. Forbes is calling to Forrest to tell him to cut the dig. And that it probably would have been a PBU if they had pads on, right? Because he's breaking on that football. So great communication by those young guys on the back end to a very, very tight window throw to an excellent route and a very nice delivery on the ball. So at some point, the defense is going to catch up to the offense because they've seen the same concepts. And I think when I went and watched practice last week, they are walking through the concepts they're seeing in practice. So what I mean by that is an individual period, they get all the scout team guys with yellow hats on and they walk through the route concepts. So for the day, EB gives a script to the defensive coaches and says, this is what we're running. And the defensive players have to know because you have to prep that. You can't just go out there and try to execute your defense versus whatever. You have to have some idea of route concepts. And so they're helping each other out. They're making each other better. But I think that's part of the reason why you see some of these struggles from Sam. I think, you know what I mean? And you're kind of getting out of what he does well. He's good at getting kind of the ball out of his hand quickly. So earlier in the OTA period, it was a lot of quick game, a lot of 5-step. And now you're into kind of some deeper shot plays. And obviously they did 2-minute and stuff yesterday too. So there's that. But I think the defense is just, they're doing a good job and they deserve credit in addition to Sam kind of, I don't know, having some young guy growing pains a little bit, so.
Yeah, which is expected. This is his 5th practice as QB1 and there you go. Meanwhile, I thought it was interesting. Rivera said before practice yesterday when he was asked about Brissett, like, what do you see from him? And he's like, his ball placement is pristine. And I think you saw that yesterday. Like, I think as these windows get tighter, you see where Jacoby just understands exactly where the ball needs to be. And I thought he had a pretty good day yesterday. Maybe a better day than Howell, which is not me saying that he should be the starter by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But I think on that given day, playing with and against the twos in significantly less reps, and that's another thing I thought was interesting is like, even in 2-minute, like the ones were the only ones that got 2-minute yesterday. All the twos were like, what? How you blowing the horn now? So, but I thought Brissett was really, really good. I will say this about Brissett. Throwing a football is so easy for him. It's gross.
Yeah.
It just looks like he's playing soft toss in the backyard with the 7-year-old, and he throws the ball 30 yards in the air, 50 yards downfield. And it just the motion is so easy. It was pretty wild to see in person, the arm strength that he has. Forbes is a guy that I wanted to ask you about, and this is one where you kind of need the tape to review it. He is so physical and so hands-on, and I wonder how much he's got his hands on a bunch of footballs, no picks yesterday, but multiple PBUs. There's one against Terry that it got talked about a lot because it looked like he went to go kind of help Terry up afterwards and Terry shook him off. I don't know whether that was kind of just like no, we're on opposite teams right now, screw you kind of competitiveness, whether there was like some jawing happening, whether he was, they were joking. I don't know what it was, but that one kind of got some attention. But on the play, like Forbes is all over him. And I do wonder, Logan, as you watch it on film and have the ability to rewatch it and maybe get some better angles than we do on the sideline live, is this a dude that's just going to get called for a bunch of penalties this year? Or is he playing this clean and is he having as good of an OTA period as it seems like he's having, where his hands are seeming on every football that comes in his direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think yesterday was kind of like an awesome day for him. And so I know people were talking about the Terry one, but the 3 plays before was the one where he had a PBU on Jahan. And I thought actually that one I probably would have been like, that's probably borderline PI. And so what happened is basically Jahan's running a comeback. And I do think this is another thing where Sam's still kind of feeling out the relationship between the receiver. Like the ball should be out, and he kind of holds it for like, it's a nanosecond, but it's enough time for Forbes to kind of grab Jahan's left hip, give a little tug. Jahan kind of falls off the spot, and I don't know if it would get called, but I would probably call it based on the angle I had, and then is able
Yeah,
to
you
break the pass.
offensive player, you.
Right. I mean, I got my own biases. What can I say? And so, like, to me, that one was more egregious. I actually thought the one versus Terry was like pretty clean.
Yeah.
I think Terry, like, I remember watching that one probably 4 or 5 times, like, kind of trying to discern like what Terry gave away in his break that let Forbes jump it so acutely, right? And so, what I mean by that is, like, what is Terry's indicator on his route? And the only thing I could say is that Terry kind of sits down, it's ever so slightly. It's like an inch. So his hat will drop like an inch, and right when his hat drops, Forbes is breaking on the cut on the comeback. And I think, and that's something I've always kind of been a little bit critical of Terry, is that, like, he's a very efficient route runner, but he's not an elite route runner the same way, like, Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs is, right? A guy that is going to use that subtle head dip to kind of get the guy to give him a false read, false indicator, push to his depth. That guy's out of his back pedal, and then now I'm running the comeback, right? He's going to run it like it's kind of drawn on paper a little bit. And so I think Forbes just kind of said, I get it. I know what you're doing. I'm going to make a pass here. And so there's those 2 plays, and I'd say one of them is probably a PI, if I'm being, kind of tic-tac. But I think after watching him yesterday, like, he looked like the first round draft pick, right? He looked like one of the best corners in the draft, and you feel good about it. And it wasn't just the PBUs, it's also the understanding of the coverages, right? Calling guys to cut passes, and he's doing that all the time. Understanding this guy goes in, this guy's coming out, I got to get back. He did have like a near miss in the red zone to Jahan, I thought, where he's getting a little nosy trying to pick something off. I think it was an out route. Jahan's running a corner in the back of the end zone. He's probably got to fall off that and be there. The ball is too deep and Jahan's out of the end zone. But I do think
that was the one where there was 1 second left in the period, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a ball that Sam needed to put on John.
Yeah. And it was, and obviously it's a tough throw because, like, there's, like, they've kind of contorted the defense to make a tight window here. And that was the other thing, man. Like, he did such a nice job. I'm talking about Forbes now. They're running like a scissors concept. I don't even know if it was scissors, but basically like a big corner, and you got someone in the flat, and usually you want the corner to kind of get nosy on the flat, and he plays it perfectly in between. So the quarterback can't layer the ball to the corner, but he can't throw it to the flat because the corner, Forbes, is kind of right in between, in a perfect way to kind of condense both windows, right? And Sam's got to hold the ball and then check the football down. And I say, wow, like, that's so. To me, I thought Forbes had a great day yesterday. I don't know what he's saying to Terry. I don't know all that smack talk, whatever. But I thought he looked very sharp, and against the 2 number 1 receivers, on this team, like, he had winning reps, in my opinion, especially in OTAs, PI, whatever you want to say. And then all the other stuff that he's doing in zone coverages, because, one of the things you talked to Fred Smoot, when you watch the film from him at Mississippi State, he had a really good feel for zone in a way that the other guys in the class didn't have necessarily. So I think, I just think he had a great day, and I think he deserves to be being talked about at a really high level. So
yeah, no, I thought he was great. Man, when you see him in person, those legs are skinny, but
they are skinny. He's a skinny guy.
Dude can play some ball. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting too to watch the alignment stuff. They seem to now be open to him playing inside. Ron said before practice yesterday, they were like, yeah, we'll throw him in there, see what happens. And I think they may have expected like the Brandon Sheriff at tackle experiment, where it's like, oh, okay, we know what we got here. We got a guard, or we got an outside corner. And Ron said they've been so impressed by his quickness that he might wind up playing some inside. And I do think there's going to be some versatility between him, BSJ. Kendall hasn't played in there yet so far in the spring, but Ron did keep that door open. And it sounded like maybe it would be more in like a safety-ish role, which he's played a little bit in the past, or not necessarily like a true nickel. So whether it's the Buffalo or, kind of a safety who comes down in the box, but it's actually Kendall, like, it seems like they've got some plans to kind of mix up who is where and try to confuse offenses a little bit. I don't know how much offenses really care about that. But it is something where you might be able to get a playmaker like an Emmanuel Forbes in a more advantageous position against certain offenses to get his nose in there and be around the football. And obviously that's what they drafted him for, is to create turnovers. And so if you can get him in a place where he's more apt to do that based off a certain offense, that seems like a good thing, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think so. I kind of am on the fence about how serious they are about this. I think Forbes can play inside. I think that's great. Ultimately, though, I think he's going to be one of your better outside corners, right? And
Agreed.
I think they're doing the right thing. They're going to cross train these guys, like kind of like you would an offensive line. Like you're going to have your tackle play guard, your guard play some tackle, just in case there's an injury, just in case so we can get the best guys out on the field. So, I mean, just as an example, let's say BSJ and Kendall Fuller are playing crazy good, right? You're not going to have, Wild Goose come in and play nickel when you got Forbes, your first round pick on the bench, right? If he
Right.
can play nickel. So I think it's just good process. I don't think that's how it's going to shake out. I think BSJ will probably play nickel, and I think Forbes will probably play outside. At least that's what my gut tells me.
Yeah,
But,
I agree.
there's still a lot of football left. So, all the flexibility that they have in the secondary, all the flexibility they have from a personnel standpoint is only going to help them. It's only going to let them get the best guys on the field, put guys in good positions to be successful. Percy Butler and Forrest have done a great job. Forrest had maybe a small miss yesterday. I can't remember exactly the play, but overall been extremely solid. Percy, same thing. And so, you get
Yeah,
that
and they're doing all this
flexibility.
without Cam even being on the field
Yeah.
yet.
And so like that back end is, and then obviously you mentioned Quan, how he's looked in certain coverage situations, been great. So my hat's off to that group because like I think that group's they just look sharper. They look sharper than they did last year. They look more dialed in, and they've got young, fast athletes back there. So on the whole, I think that position flexibility is great. But I think if I was going to put money on it now, and again we're 5 practices in, I'd say he's going to play outside. That's
Yeah,
what I would
no,
say. Forbes.
I agree, but it's good to know that he can play inside for all the reasons that you said. And happy to bring that to you each and every week here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, for full episodes, you can go to youtube.com/@1067 The Fan to watch, or you can go to your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the free Odyssey app, wherever it is that you get your pods, and take a listen. We do that twice a week during the off season, 3 times a week during the season. So make sure you subscribe. Do not miss an episode, and your life will be better. That's how many podcasts can guarantee that, Anthony? How many times can a podcast look at you and be like, you want to know what? We're gonna make your life better.
I don't think so many.
I think a lot of podcasts probably do promise that. I don't know how many of them deliver though.
Oh, deliver.
Yeah, see that's the thing.
Key.
I feel like we deliver. We're like, hey, here's football knowledge delivered by people who are smart and know what they're talking about, have experience in the field. Logan has experience on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of no BS, no funny business. Occasionally funny, but no funny business. And other people are like, if you eat our yogurt and practice our meditation, your life will be better. We don't need those podcasts. We just want to talk about some football.
Of course.
Yeah.
That was very convincing.
I feel like you are now also protecting yourself. I feel like you have thoughts on wellness journeys or people close to you that have been on wellness jerseys and you don't want to talk about it.
Not at all.
What is it that poet came in and told us the other day? Drink your water, mind your business.
Yep. That's exactly what she said.
That's the wellness jersey journey that everybody needs and more people need. Drink your water. Stay hydrated, kids. Mind your own damn business. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony and I are actually going to circle back to Emmanuel Forbes and where he's lining up and the idea that he could play inside, outside a little bit later on in the show. So looking forward to doing that. Coming up in the 5:30 spot, Clinton Yates joins us for his Friday business. Friday visit. I got to text him and see what he wants to talk about. One, I don't want him making fun of me on the air for not suggesting segments. 2, I got one thing in particular I want to talk about with him, but I got to see if he's up for it. So we'll get to that at 5:30. Certainly talk some NBA Finals with Yates at 5:30, amongst other things. Thoughts from me on Travis Schank and the hire for the Wizards coming up in a little bit as well. But we'll get the thoughts of Josh Robbins next. The Athletics Wizards beat reporter joins us for Not My Beat.
You can listen to
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Clinton Yates coming up at the bottom of the hour talking NBA Finals and more. But right now, let's get to our top local story of the day. The Wizards are expanding their front office.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Joining us to talk about it, Wizards beat reporter for The Athletic, Josh Robbins. Mr. Robbins, how are you, sir, on this Friday?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you, Craig.
Excellent, excellent. So Travis Schank was a name that I thought could be in the mix for a lot of jobs this NBA offseason. His exit from Atlanta was somewhat bizarre and not in anything having to do with the job that he was doing or anything about him. Obviously, he came from Golden State, where they've got a pretty significant vacancy in the wake of Bob Myers leaving. I thought he could be in play for the general manager job here. How did it wind up that they got him for what will probably be, I guess, the number 3 role in their front office as a VP of player personnel?
In this case, Michael Winger has known Travis Schank for roughly 15 years. And there was a strong trust level there, a mutual respect.
Anthony, did we lose Josh there?
Yeah, I guess so. Let me try to call him back.
Okay. We'll get Josh back on the phone in just a moment. So Schank, for those that don't know, Travis Schank was the assistant general manager under Bob Myers in Golden State from 2012 to 2017. Obviously, a huge part of putting together that team, of getting Steph Curry signed on that extension, drafting Draymond Green. Like, he was a part of really cementing that dynasty, making the moves that bring in, Andre Iguodala and everything that launches that dynasty. So he then goes to Atlanta, and there's kind of a bizarre exit there, and then now he's here. So, Josh, we didn't really get much of your answer there, so I'll let you just pick up from kind of the start of how did we wind up with Travis Schank in DC?
Okay, Travis Schank and Michael Winger have known each other for 15 years. Strong level of mutual respect. And Travis Schank is someone who is well regarded in the scouting community. He's a good talent evaluator, and one of his best skills, player evaluation, rounds out the skill set that Michael Winger has. So Travis Schank will have a very high level of input as to who they draft, who they pursue in free agency, who they trade for. Along with the upcoming hire of a number 2 executive for the Wizards.
So if Schank is kind of the talent guy and Winger is kind of the bigger picture guy, a lot of salary cap experience, things like that, what is the role that they're looking to fill with GM? Like, what's the missing skill set there to round out this front office?
The GM, if that's what the title is going to be, that might not be the actual title. Essentially, it's the number 2 person underneath Michael Winger. It'll be someone who brings a level of player evaluation, that's for sure. In that sense, the person will duplicate a lot of Travis Schlank's abilities. But this is also going to be someone who's going to interact on a daily basis with the coach, the coaching staff, the players. So someone who, I wouldn't quite say he or she will be the bridge between Michael Winger and the coaches and the players, because Michael Winger will have some interaction there. But this will be someone who's really kind of the day-to-day, hands-on, day-to-day manager of the team, where the coaches are not. So there will be some duplication there in terms of what Winger brings and what Schank brings, but this will be someone who also will be a little bit more public-facing, perhaps, than Winger will be.
Got it. Josh Robbins, of course, from The Athletic, their Wizards beat reporter with us. So based off of what we know about Winger and how he's built teams in the past, and what we know about Schank and the teams that he's been a part of and how he helped build the Warriors, how he built the Hawks, what does that tell us about what we think he might do or what they might do with the Wizards?
It's very difficult to figure out what Michael Winger might do based on his time in LA. because so much of that time in LA was predicated on the fact that Kawhi Leonard wanted to go to LA, and the Lakers couldn't have him for cap purposes. So tough to say in that sense. It's not a very clean track record. Travis Schlenk has a clearer track record. He's someone who essentially pulled off a rebuild in Atlanta in roughly 3 years. Drafted well, not superbly, but very well with very few clear misses. So I would expect that under this duo, plus the number 2 person coming in, they would aim to make the most out of their draft picks, wouldn't be afraid to trade in the draft, will place a high premium on player character and fit. Not that Tommy Shepard didn't. I think that will continue in this case. Most executives around the league expect the Wizards to rebuild at some point, some sooner than later. I think that they will rebuild at some point, not necessarily right off the bat, but at some point I expect this Wizards team to rebuild.
So why do you say that it might not be right off the bat?
Part of the problem is that, first of all, he's not sure what Bradley Beal will want to do. He can veto any trade. They would have to work with him on sending him to a place where he would want to go. But beyond that, with Kyle Kuzma going to become an unrestricted free agent, Kristaps Porzingis having the ability to become an unrestricted free agent, it would tie the Wizards' hands in terms of being able to trade them. If they are looking to receive someone or picks back for Kuzma and Porzingis, and if the Wizards decide to rebuild, they may be better off re-signing both players and then trading them within the next year. Otherwise, it's in some ways a better use of I hate to use the word asset because we're talking about people here, but
sure.
But better use of an asset without losing someone for nothing. Being able to re-sign both guys makes it easier for them to trade and give them probably a better return than in a sign and trade.
Got it. Josh Robbins, Wizards beat reporter for The Athletic, with us here on the Team 980. So, Josh, let's go through two main scenarios then, which I guess the opposite sides of the same coin. Beal is open to a trade. Beal is not. So if he's open to a trade, what's the best case scenario for them? And of course, realistically, the best case scenario is he's like, I don't care, trade me wherever, and some team falls in love with him and they get everything they ever dreamed of back. But realistically, based off the places that we think he'd be open to going and what those places have in return, what's the best case scenario if Beal is open to a trade, and that, including in that answer, like what they would then do with Porzingis and Kuzma? Because that's honestly what I struggle with is like, do you still then try to keep one of them, both of them? Do you just punt and start over and not really care what you get in return because you have a clean slate? I can't come up with a good answer in my own head, so I'm going to make you do it for me.
Thanks.
What a guy. What a guy.
And perhaps the vice president's motorcade will drive past my building again and disconnect me again. I think that's what happened before. Yes, I think that is why I got disconnected. But I digress.
Kamala Harris interrupting the show, not what we had on the bingo card on a Friday, but here we are.
Correct. So the best case scenario where he says trade me anywhere, that's not going to happen. He's got the no trade clause for a reason to prevent almost exactly that.
Right.
To make sure that the Wizards don't trade him to a place where he can't win. I would assume that would be his priority if he gives them a list of 2 or 3 teams where he'd be willing to go. The problem is that any team that would be looking to trade for Bradley Beal and any team that Bradley Beal will permit a trade to is a team that's probably on the verge of winning, which means that the value of the draft picks that would be incoming that team directly owns, directly has control over, likely won't be very good. You think maybe 20th overall or worse in the first round. That's a problem. In addition, given that he's going to make approximately $50 million in salary, they're going to have to take back money. The Wizards are going to have to take in money. So it's problematic. And, for example, one team to watch here is Philly. Mm-hmm. If James Harden leaves, and there's a tremendous amount of noise, as reported by the Philly Inquirer, that James Harden is going in free agency to Houston. Well, then Philly immediately needs another scorer to complement Joel Embiid. But would Philly trade away Tyrese Maxey? Unlikely. That's where you would hope that the negotiating skills of Michael Winger, which are supposed to be superb, would come into play. But I can't imagine the Philadelphia 76ers trading Tyrese Maxey. I think more along the lines of someone such as like Tobias Harris.
Right. So Josh, we've talked on the show about like the two potential trades that I've been told to look out for. And like some of this is a little bit of inside information. Some of this is just the math, right? Is Harris plus something like a Korkmaz or something, but maybe even just Harris for Beal, basically straight up. And then the other one to watch, which is super interesting right now, considering how their playoffs have gone, is Miami, where you could do Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry for Beal, and the math all works. And to me, if I'm the Wizards, I'm for both of those deals because Lowry's money is partially guaranteed, and I would take Hero as a guy who's a 20-point scorer and costs a lot less than Bradley Beal. And I would take Harris as a 1-year, rental that you could flip again at the trade deadline, even if you wanted to, or just let him expire and you're at least out from underneath the money compared to Beal, where you've got the next 4 years. And for me, those are good deals, but then I still don't know what you do. Do you then try to re-sign Porzingis, or do you hope you try to trade him? And that's where I get stuck on the equation.
Well, you didn't quite take the words out of my mouth, but you came close. Miami is the other team that is rumored there.
Yeah.
And that would be a very attractive team to Bradley Beal. And they were said to really be high on Bradley Beal heading into this postseason. But keep in mind, not even Miami expected to go past the first round this postseason.
Sure.
And so I think everyone was operating under the assumption that the Heat absolutely desperately needed Bradley Beal in order to give Jimmy Butler one last chance at a finals in his closing window. But yes, I think the Tyler Hero package would be an appealing one to Washington because, first of all, he's a young guy and he would be under team control, essentially contractually. I believe I think he's finished his first contract. He still has more years left to go on the current contract. I think he'd be a more attractive piece. The problem is that now Miami is 4 wins away from the title. And would Miami be less likely to go after Bradley Beal? Certainly it seems to me to be a little less likely than it was entering the postseason. But I agree with you fully. Those are the two teams to watch most, in part because Bradley Beal would have a reasonable reason to want to go to each town to play for those teams. Those teams have chances to win titles.
Yeah. Josh Robbins with us from The Athletic here on the Hoffman Show for Not My Beat. Josh, always a pleasure, and hope you're not in the middle of a call if the vice president decides to go the other way.
Understood. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, man. We'll see you. Josh Robbins, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Let's keep talking about these two potential moves and kind of fill in the rest of the gap. What would you then do with Porzingis? What would you then do with Kuzma? We're gonna think out loud next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. You know what else is free, Anthony?
The Odyssey app.
I said what else? I just said.
Oh. The YouTube stream.
Yeah! It is. You can watch us live, youtube.com/@theteam980. Subscribe and watch us on. See, here's the thing. You can watch us like we're a TV show. Like you go home, you flip on Around the Horn, for instance, a show that Clinton Yates is on, except for when he's with us, which is going to be in 10 minutes. And you like people talking in boxes with graphics that says what they're talking about. That's what we are if you watch on the stream. So we work as a television show, and now because basically every TV is a smart TV, if you just have the YouTube app, which your smart TV definitely has, and you subscribe to the YouTube or Team 980 YouTube page, which is one click easy, you open the YouTube app and you hit like your suggested videos. We're going to be the first one because we're live, and YouTube loves to suggest a live video. And then you watch us like we're a TV show. It's like you just selected a TV channel. Voila. So you can listen to us in your car on the way home from work and then watch us in the background while you're making dinner or whatever else you're doing.
Very good instructions.
Kick your feet up, have a beer. Watch your boys talk about sports. There you go.
I like that.
Yates in 9 minutes, talking NBA Finals. Also, Adam Silver had his State of the League press conference and had some interesting comments on Ja Morant. It sounds like there is some significant punishment coming for Morant. We'll talk to Clinton about it coming up at 5:30. But right now, Anthony, picking up where we left off with Josh Robbins. So I don't struggle with the Beal piece. And here come the speaking of YouTube, here come the, hey, anti-Beal much comments. Again, you can't start over unless you start over, and they need to start over. But starting over with Beal doesn't necessarily mean Kuzma and Porzingis have to go. And this is where I struggle because there is the asset management piece, and I appreciate Josh as he answered that question saying like, hey, I hate using the word asset because we're talking about human beings here, but realistically, we're talking about like how the contracts move and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You have a set amount of dollars under salary cap, and players have contracts that represent those dollars, and thus there is an asset management piece to this. And so you have the asset management piece, which says you should absolutely re-sign Kuzma and then see if you can trade him. Letting him walk is a bad idea. There is another piece of me that says just start over. Like this year does not matter. And in fact, the asset management piece is going to be a little bit overrated because you want to be a bad basketball team. You want to be at the top of the draft next year. And in order to do that, like Kyle Kuzma and Kristaps Porzingis are good basketball players. Not great, but good, very solid basketball players who will help you win too many games. And they're better off for them in this stage of their career to go to a place where they can win basketball games because they can help winning teams. They just need to be asked to do less than they were asked to do here. And so if I'm them, I'd want out. If I'm them, frankly, I want out anyway. Like, I don't know why, outside of the money, I don't know why Kuzma would re-sign here. And like, let me rephrase. Outside of money and lifestyle, he likes being in Washington, D.C., right? And that's something I've always said with Brad is if Bradley Beal just wants to be the man and live in D.C. and like be a franchise legend, he's got that power. And that's a perfectly human decision to make. I think most people that play sports would probably be like, I know I'm comfortable and I really like my life, but I only can play basketball for so long and I want to be somewhere where I feel like I have a better chance of winning a championship, and they can be realistic about that. And if I was Brad and I'm staring down the backside of 30, I'm probably having that discussion with my wife about where we're moving to. But that's the TBD part. So let's say that happens and Brad gets traded to Philly or Miami or Boston comes through with some offer. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about could there be a three-way trade between Boston, Portland, and Washington involving, you know, multiple of the top picks and Jaylen Brown. And I feel like that's a bit far-fetched, but I think there's a much better chance that, like, Washington winds up with the third pick in the draft than they do Jaylen Brown. And that could be a way to do it, where Beal goes to Boston, Brown goes to Portland, the number 3 pick, and a guy like Anthony Simons comes here. I'd have to check the math on that. It feels like there's a huge missing piece in terms of salary cap, but we'll get there. But no matter where Brad goes, if he's not here, what do you do with Porzingis? What do you do with Kuzma? I think from an asset management standpoint, the best thing you do is you re-sign them, or you have Porzingis opt in, which, by the way, he has to do on June 21st, the day before the draft. He's got to either opt in or opt out. He could opt out and sign an extension immediately. But he's got a $36 million player option. So whether it's opt in, opt out, and then trade them at the deadline, I think that is your best asset management. But the question is, what does your team look like between now and then? And I think that's the scary thing, Anthony, is like you look at it, if they move on from Porzingis and Kuzma, what the hell do they have? If Beal, Porzingis, and Kuzma are gone, like, who's your best player? You got Monte Morris and Corey Kispert and Daniel Gafford and...
I mean, you don't have much to work with, but that's a part of, starting over. Like,
yeah.
I think we need to – I'm not going to say we need to take a page out of the Oklahoma City Thunder's book, because their rebuild was like multiple years, and I don't want it to be multiple years. Like, if we have a down year, all right. We have a down year, we're going to be
if they can get the equivalent of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the trade, sign me up right now.
Of course. But the odds of, landing a young budding star is like just
slim.
It's very slim. So, I mean, just looking at the roster, it's going to be tough to, actually be okay with it. But in order for us to, really move forward in the direction that we need to, we have to be able to let go of Kuz and Kristaps, because guess what? They're getting older. Like, I don't know how many years they have to, wait around for a complete Washington Wizards rebuild. But if I'm them, I don't want to stay around for a rebuild. Now, if they do, that's a different story. But
because you do need some vets. Like, you need some, and KP's been great. And that's like why I kind of think, my June 2nd prediction is, and I would love to know what they're getting back in the trade, right? But my June 2nd prediction is Beal gets traded. Porzingis opts in or re-signs with the general, they can't say, hey man, we'll definitely trade you at the deadline, but they can kind of do what the Thunder did with Chris Paul, frankly. They're like, hey man, we're going to try to find you a good situation. It's got to work for us too, but you'll be here a year at most. Yep. And then with Kuz, I think Kuz just decides to go somewhere else. I don't know if the Wizards have a say in that one. That's my June 2nd, 5:30 prediction.
I like it.
And that's going to take some stones from Winger. He's got to be able to be like, yeah, hey, Ted, thanks for hiring me. We're going to win 25 games this year.
Yep. Before things start looking, beautiful, it might be a little ugly at first.
Yeah, it's just going to be a patch of dirt.
Exactly.
You wait. Those flowers, they're going to bloom. I see on the TV behind you, Yates is in the finale. Or in the final round on Around the Horn. Guess we'll find out if he wins, and then he'll join us next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app on a Friday, past the halfway point with you until 7 o'clock. Right now, for his Friday visit, we welcome in a top 2 finisher on today's Around the Horn. It is Clinton Yates. Did you win? We saw you in the top 2, and then I couldn't see if you won or not.
Why don't you restate what you just said and know that you were incorrect? A top 2 finisher. Get out of here. How about top 2, not 2?
There we go. See, that's what I was asking. I didn't know if you won. That was I just said that.
Okay, so for background, Gregory texted me like 5 minutes ago asking me what I wanted to talk about, and I told him, turn on your television. I've already been talking about it. So that's where that comes from. For all of you who love the behind-the-scenes stuff of what we do.
Yeah, I have one television in my office where I do the show from on Fridays, and it is used as a second computer screen so I can see Anthony. So I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm sorry. The show should be built around this 12 minutes, and alas, I have to do 3 hours.
Okay, I get it. How are you? What are we talking about today, bro?
Because you read the text message. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals. I want to talk about John Morant here in a few. Adam Silver, some very interesting comments last night. I want to talk about what he said and then kind of a larger discussion about it. But, I mean, we started the show, obviously, with the Finals, Clinton. And if I am Denver coming out of that game, I feel all right. If I'm Miami, I feel all right. If we can just hit some freaking shots, we would have had ourselves a ball game. But how do you feel coming out of that one, Denver going up 1-0?
I would agree with you, except for the fact that I don't agree with the basic notion of if we could just hit some freaking shots, because this wasn't like they were blowing a bunch of open stuff. They did, but there were also a lot of contested and what I like to call change shots that was really messing up the Heat offense. I thought their shot selection was terrible, and it was a direct result of the Nuggets' length, size, and frankly, toughness and hustle that the Heat did not match. So, yeah, you hope some of those shots go down. You hope Max Strus doesn't go 0 for Biscayne Bay. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you got a monster game from Bam. And so if you kind of take that as a trade-off, you got to do more than just make shots, because one person did, a couple other people didn't. I just felt like they got outplayed, and in a way that was very surprising to me for a Spoelstra-coached Heat team.
Yeah, it's interesting on the shot selection thing, because I do feel like the shots, by and large, were far less comfortable than they were against Boston, while Strus was the one guy who seemed to have open look after open look, and he went 0 for 9. And then Highsmith has 18 points in 23 minutes. You're probably not getting that again. I will say the Bam part is fascinating to me, because he did the thing that so many bigs refuse to do, which is just take the open shot. Like, we've been told it's layups or threes, and some of these bigs get caught in between, and they can make that mid-range jumper. And to watch him actually be aggressive, I thought was an encouraging, again, if you want to be optimistic from Miami, I feel like that is on some level repeatable.
Easily. I mean, I don't know about repeatable, but that's easily the thing that's most to be encouraged by, because if for nothing else other than mindset, even if you don't get the same exact amount of output in terms of points, in terms of efficiency, if you've got him going to the rack, you can change that other problem that happened, which was, 2 free throws in the entire game. I thought that was as much of a function, again, of shot selection as it was of refereeing or any sort of bias. And if Bam is in attack mode, you got a better chance of fixing that problem, which is not getting to the charity stripe.
Right, and 0 of them for Jimmy Butler. I got the sense, or kind of like had this thought towards the end of the Boston series, like, I think he's tired. Like, he is so freaking tough, and he's taken on so much load for this team. And I just think we're at a point where Jimmy Butler is tired. Like, is that a fixable problem for Miami in this series, or are they going to have to figure out how to win with a Jimmy Butler who doesn't have the 48-point playoff Jimmy performance in him?
I don't know that it's a fixable problem, but I don't necessarily think that it's something that has to be a major disadvantage. Jimmy Butler is still one of the smartest players in the league, never mind being one of the most athletic and the toughest. And so for me, Spo's got to find a way that whatever amount of minutes he can get the most productive out of Jimmy, that's what you focus on. And maybe you don't even focus on it on game 2. You focus on it for when he's at home, presumably a little bit more rejuvenated or whatever that may be. You got to find a way to make sure that you can get any productive games out of Jimmy at this stage of the season. Never mind try to change the entire wave of what's going on with one guy and thus the whole team. So that's going to be the challenge for Spo, and it's going to be a tough one considering their opponents.
Clint Yates with us, ESPN, of course, on Around the Horn. Here's my Around the Horn style Tony Reali question of the day: Is Joker the best player in the world?
Oh, man. I mean, he's the best player in the world still playing basketball right now. I don't necessarily need to live on that Mount Rushmore or whatever we want to call it, but what he does is definitively different than what everybody else does. You know, the easiest metaphor is that he's like a dad playing against his kids. It's not necessarily that everything he does is that great. He just does things that everybody else can't do. You know, one of the things about him that's so difficult to understand is how he makes other players better because he puts them in positions that other players can't do between height, reach, touch, and accuracy. And that's impossible to replace. Like, sorry, you're looking at the greatest right now. Sure, I'll give it to you, Gregory. I talked myself into it.
So I actually don't think he is. And I talked about this yesterday, that I feel like we're such a prisoner of the moment. He's been one of the best 3 players on the planet for the last 3 years, which is good enough, obviously. Okay. I still would take Giannis. If you told me we have to draft a team tomorrow for next year or the next 5 years, like, I'd still take Giannis. And I just feel like people are in such a rush to have that kind of discussion that we don't really appreciate it. So I like, in a way, I actually appreciate your answer more, because you identify the things that make him great as opposed to this rush to rank everything and then everyone else sucks.
Yeah, that's what it is for me. It's just his skill set is such that I just find it incomparable. Whether or not it equates to the top player is a different matter. I just find it more impressive than a lot of things I've pretty much ever seen in the NBA.
No, very well put. Incomparable is a great word to describe. The incomparable Nikola Jokic. Clint Yates with us. All right, let's talk about Ja. Silver, obviously everyone kind of is up to date with what happened with Morant, but Adam Silver talks about it for the first time extensively last night. It is tradition that the NBA commissioner gives a State of the League press conference before the NBA Finals. He was asked about Morant and seemed to suggest that there is fairly significant punishment coming for Morant after the NBA Finals. What do you make of that, assuming that is what's coming?
You know, I said this on the show today, and I still definitively feel the same way, if not more so, which is I didn't like the tone of this at all. And I'm not necessarily trying to take a moral high ground against anybody else, but for me, if you're Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, and what you're trying to say is we don't want this to deflect from the finals attention, well, then why are you talking about it at all? All you have to say is investigation ongoing, no further discussion. To then proceed to sort of loosely throw out by the way, there's a couple carrots here for these rabbits to chase, it felt disingenuous to the actual point he was making. Never mind, why would you do that to begin with? You could have gotten this over with a while ago, but instead you want to hold it over Ja's head or whoever's head, as in the Grizzlies or his family. I don't know. There's something about that to me that just didn't sit right in my bones, as they say, Anthony. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't like it, and I don't think it was necessary from a professionalism standpoint either.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. It did strike me as weird because if you just say the investigation's ongoing, we expect it to conclude at the end of the finals, then nobody knows the difference, that it's actually done and you're just waiting. But like PR strategic error aside, I think the bigger question that comes out of like the substance of what he said is like he seems to really be struggling with the fact that he knows he has to punish Morant, but he doesn't know that punishing him will actually be the difference in him changing his behavior, which I think is ultimately what he wants here. Like if there was a way that Adam Silver could snap his fingers, suspend him 0 games, and have John Morant stop flashing guns on Instagram and doing any other things that they found in this investigation, as he did say there were other incidents that came up, that's what Adam Silver would want. He does seem to have the right thing in mind in terms of like whatever the healing process is, whatever it is that makes Morant quote unquote better. It's just, how do you also manage the punishment aspect of it? And it seems, Clinton, like Adam Silver's really struggling with that. And I get that because I don't know what the right answer is there, but I'm curious what you, like if Adam Silver came to you and was like, what should we do here? What would be your suggestion?
Get him out of Memphis. That would be my number one suggestion. I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, and I know that a lot of people seem to not understand the basic operations of how, frankly, urban systems work in America, but I said this on the show today, and I don't mean to keep saying that, but Memphis is a city that eats its own. And if you are a $250 million target who is a young man who likes to have fun and is about a family vibe, that is a dangerous situation. People say, oh, he should be living that life. That's easy to get away from if you have money. You don't know about Memphis. I really honestly think that there is something about the culture of where the place is. I don't just mean the franchise, that makes this a very difficult and sticky wicket that is insolvable. How do you make somebody feel like they are not a target wherever they go? How do you do that? Is it a fine? Is it, sequestering them? Is it sending them to rehab? I don't know. In the very real on-the-ground situation, you can just look up of the history of humans from and about that town that have had their lives tragically taken to understand why. I get it. There's a constant sense of need to forget about goofing off. That's just the kid trying to blow off steam. But the idea of protection and all this other stuff, it is extremely complicated. And the way that I would say it most frankly, it is out of Silver's depth. It is, quite frankly, out of a lot of people's depth, which is why that place is what it is in America. It's a very tough situation to me, Craig, and I don't say that flippantly, man. I don't like how this is going, and I believe that if the NBA is going to show this much concern for punishing Ja, I hope they show this much concern to who he actually is on the inside, too.
Yeah, it's tough, and Silver said that yesterday. He just seems like a great kid, but he keeps doing this stuff, and, like, that can't happen. And that's kind of the rock in a hard place where they feel like they've put him. And obviously, good luck going to the Grizzlies and being like, hey, man, we figured out what the solution is. You have to trade a generational talent who has brought excitement and championship aspirations to your city. All right, see ya.
This is America, man. I mean, we're talking about a place that plays a song called, pardon me here, Whoop That Trick in the arena, and people love it. Like, I'm not even joking about that. It's a very different place for most markets in America, never mind for NBA basketball, where you've got young brothers out here getting it, because that's just how the market works. It's a very, very tricky circumstance.
No doubt. Clint Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show for his Friday visit. Have a phenomenal weekend, my friend.
Absolutely, Gregory. It's good to talk to you.
You as well. See you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Clinton Yates, everybody, with us on the Hoffman Show. A quick look at what is trending. And then when we get back, I wish I'd done the tease with Yates still on the phone, because I would have loved to see his reaction to this, Anthony. I would have loved to see Clinton just giggle. I'm doing my first ever sprint triathlon this weekend. So your boy's going to be swimming, biking, and then running for what I hope to be an hour and a half. If we go farther than that, we've gone slower than anticipated. But that is the goal. And here's what I want. I've got a bunch of tweets already, but if you have done either like a half marathon, so some kind of 10-miler, obviously if you've done any kind of triathlon before, from sprint to Ironman, I'm going to use the fact that I have a radio show to help myself here. 301-230-0980. I want your advice for me this weekend. And specifically, I'm not looking for like, hey, man, go give it your best. I want, hey, after you finish the swim, make sure that you do this thing. On the bike, make sure you XYZ. Like, I'm looking for the thing that if you've done an event like this, you wish you knew in your first event. The tricks of the trade. That's what I want. 301-230-0980. Take your calls so that you can help me next on The Hoffman Show.
Here's what's trending.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So as folks know, I do the show from home on Fridays. So Anthony and I have a video chat going. And sometimes I just see in the commercial break, Anthony is dancing, but I can't hear what he's playing. And I just saw him just going for it all break long. And I was like, I don't know what he is about to play. And Kesha was not the thing I thought was going to be coming into my headphones.
Well, that's my word of advice. Don't stop, make it pop.
So I'm running a sprint triathlon this weekend. I'm very excited to do it, but definitely nervous. I've never done an event like this before. Obviously, I have a fitness background. I've done all kinds of fitness challenges by myself, but never have I run like an organized race like this of this length. I've done some 5Ks over the years, whatever, but never something this long, never something this intense. I feel like the training went pretty well. I feel confident. Oddly, I feel most confident in the swim, but I think that's also because my expectations are so low. I'm not a swimmer, and it's only 400 meters. And it's in a pool. So that's some of the advice that I've gotten on Twitter is very related to swimming in open water. I will never do open water. Not interested. Not interested in getting into the lake and being like, when am I done with this thing? No thanks. No thanks. But 50-meter pool, go down all 8 lanes, just snake up and down, and then get on the bike, 12-mile bike ride. It's a 4-mile loop I'll do 3 times, and then a 5K run to end. My goal time is an hour and a half. We'll see once the adrenaline gets going if I can beat that. I'm also a little scared. In some of my test runs, my bike was a little slow, so we'll see. But I'm curious. Like I realized as I prepared for this, Anthony, it's like preparing for 3 separate events. There's the transitions, which a lot of people are like, hey, that's the most important part. There's fueling things to worry about. There is, the equipment is overwhelming. Like I'm going tomorrow to pick up my my number and my bib and all that kind of stuff. And I got to make sure the clothes I'm planning on wearing are going to work. Cause where does the number go on my helmet, and then one on your bike and one on when you run, and how do they track you when you swim? There's a timing chip. There's a lot of details. And so what I realized is I want help with people who have done this before for the things that they wish they knew on their first triathlon or their first distance event, if there's anything that carries over. So 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Let's start with Darius. Darius, what advice do you have for me as I attempt to run, bike, and swim on Sunday?
So you stole my thunder. You say you're in a pool. But basically, you're in a pool, so it won't be as bad. But if you're in open water, it's a whole different experience. So I would say pace yourself. In a pool, so you don't have to worry about fighting with people in the water and things like that. That was the issue I had my first sprint event. I had the wrong type of wetsuit on, and so my arms were restricted. I needed to make sure I had the sleeveless one. But so for your next one, worry about that. But for you, transition, make a good transition between the water and the bike. Make sure get your spikes on your feet, and really just hydrate between while you're out there. I mean, I think you'll be fine. The sprint is not too intense, especially if you're in a pool.
Yeah.
Make a good transition and stay hydrated. I think you'd be great, man.
Appreciate it, Darius. Yeah, that's so the temperature thing is kind of, this is me being a wimp, being nervous. It's going to be like high 50s, low 60s. And so getting out of the pool and trying to get dry onto the bike, so I'm not going, because the first part is kind of downhill. So I'll be zooming. I guess I'll air dry, but I'm like, I don't want to be wet and cold and on the bike, and you got to get your feet dry so that your socks aren't soaking wet. But I think that transition shouldn't be that bad. That's my hope, is that, because here's the other thing, Anthony, because it's a sprint and they actually in this particular one don't let you wear a full wetsuit. I'm just going with the tri bottoms, and I'm just going to go no shirt for the swim. And so I think I'm going to be okay in that transition, because I'm just going to put on a dry cycling jersey as opposed to having to dry off and that whole deal. So I'll just, quickly dry off, throw on the cycling jersey, get my cleats on, get on the bike and be off. And then hydrate as much as I can.
So is there like a station where your stuff will be, or
Yeah.
like? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a transit, and that's the thing. So for this one too, the transitions, there's 2 transition stations. Obviously, you have your swim to bike and then your bike to run. This one, it's all the same station. So I'll like have a station, and then I assume I lay out my sneakers and my towel and everything. And then I have my, my bike station ready to go. I like my run station and my bike station kind of set up next to each other. And I'll be able to see all that tomorrow. That's part of my nerves right now, is that I haven't seen that. Like, I've seen it set up as a parking lot. I haven't seen it set up as a transition area yet. So once I have a better understanding for that, I think I'll have just a general better understanding for the whole thing.
Will Rachel be there for moral support?
Yes.
That's
yes. Although there's very limited areas where she's going to be allowed.
Oh, sometimes I see in these like marathons and stuff, you see people like all spaced out throughout the town, and there's people on the side of the road giving you stuff. Like, that's what I'm imagining in my mind. I guess it's not that.
Yeah, it's not quite that. That would be great if she could just be somewhere and be like, "Hey, here's your hydration water bottle." I've got like a 20 item checklist ready to go. Like, I need my salt, water bottle, my element. I need your like more electrolyte water bottle. I need your water bottle. Let's see. Here's the stuff I got on Twitter. Dennis said, have someone at your station ready to help you to get out of your wetsuit. Don't have to worry about that. Thank God. Transitions, run through them a few times. I'll do that tomorrow. This is the kind of advice I was looking for. I got this from RVA Rob, and I think someone else too. If I scroll up in my mentions, I'll shout them out too. But he said, I've done a few sprints, and I would say don't conserve energy. I paced myself way too much because I was nervous about going out too hard. The reality was each stage provided a new rush of energy, and I held back way too much. So that to me is like the kind of advice I'm going to pace I know what my pace is on the swim. Like, I actually feel good about that. Just nice, calm, relaxed, smooth on the swim. The bike is the one where I actually don't really know how hard I want to go, but because it's a 4-mile loop 3 times, I feel like I can use the first one to like go kind of hard, but have a sense of like how hard it really is once I hit that final hill. And it's like, okay, I need to conserve more energy, or like, no, I've got it. Go for it. So that I feel good about getting right eventually, but it is going to be a challenge. Let's see. BG Obsession says you should feel like you're barely running at the start. Most people start with an insane pace way beyond their ability to maintain. If you feel like you were way too slow at the start, that's a good thing. Trust me, you will pass everyone in front of you and be glad you started slow. I just think like what I want to do for the run, there's a thing called bricking, Anthony, that happens in a triathlon because you go from bike to run. And you've used your quads so much on the bike that they feel like bricks. And so you go to run and you just kind of like, if you're not careful, like people have literally like just fallen over because their legs don't work. It's so wobbly. So I just want to like shake out the brickiness to start the run and then kind of get into a rhythm. Yeah. So I don't want to come out sprinting because I'm just going to fall over.
Yep.
And Mark says, how difficult the bike to run transition was. I wish I'd practiced that more. And I'm like, too late now. Race is Sunday. A lot of people saying just try to enjoy the scenery. So that's definitely good. A lot of well wishes. We appreciate that. The swim, Ryan, he had some good stuff. He said the swim is about energy conservation, not speed, which is impossible because you'll be amped up and excited. Let loose on the bike and run. Have fun. Finish strong. It's a great community. I'm looking forward to it, man. The pool's got me a little nervous. Because here's the other thing. Someone else brought this up too. Like because the swim is in a pool and they start you based off your estimated swim time.
Yep.
I've tested mine multiple times. I'm going to be somewhere between 7:40 and 8 minutes. I feel very confident about that. And the only reason I don't have a more exact time is because I've only been able to practice in a 25-meter pool, not a 50-meter pool. So I don't know once I take out half the turns how that's going to go. But I would assume a little bit faster than what I've been practicing at. Yeah. But like people put down the wrong times, and if I have to pass someone or like someone behind me is way fast and all of a sudden we're like in the same lane and it's all junked up, that's my only real concern for the swim.
At least you can do that. I couldn't even fathom doing that to him. So
I think you could do it.
I get tired really fast in the pool.
Yeah, well, a little bit of practice. Maybe next year, Anthony. Maybe next year I'll do it again and have you train with me.
Oh man.
Insert Rocky training montage here. Bum, 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 bum. All right. When we get back to actual athletes who get paid as opposed to the ones that have to pay to sign up for a race, we will discuss more on the NBA Finals in the 6 o'clock hour. Next, though, Sam Howell's private quarterbacks coach, who he shouted out multiple times in his press conference this week, was on with Sheehan earlier today. You'll hear from Anthony Boone next.
The Kevin.
Final hour on a Friday. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. If you got any more advice for me on the triathlon stuff, just hit me on Twitter at Craig Hoffman. I'll be taking Instagram DM at Craig_Hoffman. You can email me. Figure it out. People can get in contact with me. They do. Sometimes I don't want them to. And they do. Just, it's the internet. Scary place. It's kind of why we came up with the Never Read the Comments segment. You could leave a YouTube comment. There you go. You can watch us, of course, every day, youtube.com/@theteam980. All right. Earlier today on this fine radio station, Kevin Sheehan Show, which is now 10 to 1 daily, Kevin talked to Anthony Boone, who is Sam Howell's private quarterbacks coach, which I've known for about 5 days, or I guess 2 days now. Wednesday. It was only 2 days ago. Because Sam shouted him out a whole bunch of times at his press conference. And it was because they've been working on a lot of the things that Eric Bieniemy and Tavita Pritchard have had him working on. And they were able to do it by watching the film of Patrick Mahomes, understanding what the offense that they were running in Kansas City was and what that could mean for Sam Howell here in D.C. Howell has had a pretty interesting spring. I would say the trend line is not necessarily going the right direction. I don't mean to sound alarm bells. I don't mean to say that he's been awful. I don't mean to say anything other than it has gotten more difficult for him as time has gone on. Now, there's a lot of factors in that, including the defense is getting used to him. This is, I would say, fairly typical for a quarterback, in a OTA session. Last year to start OTAs, Carson Wentz was on fire. And then a couple days in, you're like, uh-oh. I don't know that we're at place with Sam right now, but we are at a place where I think it's time for the defense to have to react a little bit more, make it a bit of a fair fight, instead of, okay, we just practiced against this look over on the other field. Now let's go ones-on-ones and, oh, hey, look, say we know all your plays because we just, practiced against them in slow motion. So there is that element. What happens when it's a little more unscripted? That I'm still waiting to see, and we might get some of that more during the mini camp this week. And obviously, all 3 days are open to the media, so you get more data points in 3 days than you have the 2 previous open weeks just in 1 week alone. How does he continue to grow? And growth is also not linear, especially this time of year. Things get harder, but you can learn from it, and it can actually be a good thing. But part of this process is also Eric Bieniemy fitting the offense to Sam Howell. And that's the interesting, or I would say most interesting thing that came out of this interview this morning with Sheehan talking to Anthony Boone is what kind of offense does Boone, who's been working with Howell since he was a freshman in high school, what kind of offense does Boone think that Howell is best fit in? Here was what the private quarterbacks coach for the Commanders QB1 said.
Man, I really think the best offense for Sam Howell is the offense that, fully trusts that he's going to, study exactly what needs to be done. And whether that be traditional pro style under center, a lot of play action, zone boot, 5-step drop, 7-step drop. I mean, Sam Howell he's like a chameleon. He's going to be able to adapt and fit into whatever system. Now, obviously, he's not Lamar Jackson, so zone read's going to look a little different with him, right? But he can hurt guys with their feet. He can hurt guys with his arm. He's a good decision maker. He's smart. He can handle going on the center and all the ball handling, all the the run checks, and in my opinion, he's a guy yes, he's not the old school prototypical 6'4" quarterback that can run and can throw, and he's pro style, he's dual threat, but he can honestly fit in every offense. Now West Coast would probably be good for his playing style because he can throw it right. He can create different arm slots, and yes, he's a very good decision maker in the pass game. But I think personally, and I'm not trying to tout our training, but I've always, trained Sam to be able to do everything, and he's always wanted to do everything. In high school, hey, summertime he'd come home hey, look, we got, or spring break he'd come home hey, we got, till next year to get back into, your back pedal drop at Chapel Hill, but let's work pro style footwork just to prepare ourselves for the future, fight we'd ever know we're going to be in. We want to make sure that we can check all boxes across the board and not be like, oh, well, he can only play in this offense. So I really think you can throw whatever playbook at him. He's going to study it. He's going to know it.
You know what's really funny to me, Anthony?
What?
This dude, when he started talking, I was like, that's not Anthony Boone. That's Sam Howell. They sound so similar. Just pull up a random Howell cut from Wednesday. Just go back in the folder and literally pull up any cut. And I realize they're from the same part of the world. They've spent a lot of time together. Boone's obviously on the phone, so we're only getting like a little bit of his voice. But he sounds so much like Sam Howell. What he said, the substance, like, yeah, Sam's a really smart guy. He's got a lot of physical talent, a lot of tools. He can throw from multiple arm slots. That should serve him well. The quick decision-making, I think, is huge. It's one thing they haven't done as much of recently in the OTA sessions, as far as I know, doing a lot of quick game stuff where I think he's going to thrive, and that will be a bigger part of the offense. You know, sometimes the drills are designed for a certain success rate, so it feels like quarterbacks are doing better or worse. But my big takeaway from that bite is that Anthony Boone might just be a pseudonym for Sam Howell. Here's Howell speaking.
Yeah, Pat, obviously, he's a heck of a player. So much respect for him. And
all right, that's good. Now, can you just start playing the Anthony Boone clip again?
Man, I really think the best offense for Sam Howell is the offense that, fully trusts.
Back to Howell?
Yeah, Pat, obviously, he's a heck of a player. So much respect for him. And
isn't there actually, Anthony, hold on. In audition, now I'm gonna get really nerdy. In audition, I think there's a telephone effect. So if you take one of the Howell bites and you go to effects and you hit the telephone thing, I'm curious how similar they sound. I'm gonna put this theory to the test. And tell you what, Anthony, let's take a break. Let's come back. And we're going to do that science experiment because that's where we are on a Friday on this here edition of the Hoffman Show.
Celebrate.
All right, we'll talk about Emmanuel Forbes and him getting reps in the slot in a few minutes. Talk about the NBA's coaching carousel at the bottom of the hour. But right now, a very important science experiment here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Is Anthony Boone, allegedly Sam Howell's private quarterbacks coach, actually just Sam Howell? We have now put a Sam Howell soundbite through a telephone filter to see my theory, which I came up with less than 10 minutes ago. Anthony, first, do you have two Howell bites pulled up, one with the effect and one without? Because I want people to hear Sam Howell regular first, then I want to hear Anthony Boone, and then I want to hear Howell with the telephone effect to see if he sounds like Anthony Boone does on the telephone. All right. Here's just Sam Howell speaking.
Yeah, Pat, obviously, he's a heck of a player. So much respect for him and what they were able to do in Kansas City. And
Yep, okay, got it. Here's Anthony Boone speaking about Sam Howell.
Man, I really think the best offense for Sam Howell is the offense that, fully trusts that he's going to, study exactly what needs to be done.
Okay, I got a feel for it. Here's Sam Howell's voice if it's on the telephone with an effect.
Yeah, Pat, obviously, he's a heck of a player. So much respect for him and what they were able to do in Kansas City. And
I'm just saying, Anthony.
You might be on to something, Craig. You might be.
I'm just saying. I've uncovered. There's going to be someone that runs with this. Just to be perfectly clear, I am kidding. People can sound the same and be different people. But they do sound very, very similar. Obviously, get a better look at Howell next week when he is under center in OTAs, or I should say in the mandatory minicamp. And, we'll see as he continues to, learn this offense. And I also wonder, the other thing, too, that we talked about on Take Command, and Logan brought this up, that was really a good point, is they're not running any rushing plays right now. Zero. And that is not how this is going to be during the season. And so for an offense who depends heavily on play action and ball fakes and jet sweep motions and orbit motions and all these things that are threats, and of course there's still some threat to it, right? You get to send a guy in an orbit motion, he's going to draw defenders because you could throw a screen to him, and they are doing a lot with the screen game right now. So it's not like it's full steam ahead for the pass rush. Obviously, they're also not in pads on the pass rush. But from a defensive back standpoint, they are sitting much heavier in pass scenarios than they would be in typical first, second down type of drills, where you might not know, obviously if it's pass, but like a lot of 7-on-7 type of stuff. And some of those can get real hairy for a quarterback and receivers. And so I do think that the context of one, we're talking about 6 practices here, and whether that's the excitement of how well Sam was doing in the first 3 and, some of the slight deterioration we've seen in performance level in the last 3, like it's 6 practices. There's only so much you should make of it, but I think what we can definitively say is Sam has shown enough that he's going to enter, barring something really bizarre happening the next 2 weeks where he's just awful and Brissett's lighting the world on fire. And even then, I think Sam enters training camp as QB1. There's nothing that would happen short of injury, knock on wood, that has Howell anything but QB1. It's just how open is that competition by the time that we get to the fall or to the summer. And I think Howell right now has done enough to say he's got a pretty long leash still, but that leash could get shorter over the next couple of weeks, or it could be, taken off and he could run away with it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's entirely too early. But also, the point you just brought up, about them not doing a lot of run plays, you guys got to remember that, in January, Ron really wanted to run the ball. He said, and I think he misspoke when he said it in January, but he said something along the lines, he wanted to run the ball, 2 out of 3 plays or something like that.
Yeah, that was the Mayhew quote that got twisted 7 ways from Sunday. He never said it. It did give me a couple of radio segments to yell at people for being stupid. But like he said, yeah, we would like to be up in games so that we, at the end of the game, we would have run the ball 2 out of every 3 because we just ran out the clock for the entire fourth quarter. Yeah. But they do want to be like I don't think you can look at what they did in Kansas City and be like, they're going to run the same offense here. Mm-hmm. You trust Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball 40 times a game. I don't think you want to do that with Sam Howell. Yep. Now, you could do 30 to 35 with 15 of them being quick game screens, like easy, on some level, predetermined throws. A lot of RPO that generates a lot of easy throws, because that's the thing, too, is the game will be called a lot more 50-50 if you count RPO calls as run plays, but those will get executed as pass plays with a pretty high level of frequency. Especially, let's be honest, especially with Sam Howell at quarterback. Because if you're the defense, what do you want? Do you want numbers, a numbers disadvantage in the run game because you have someone stay home and Brian Robinson's running into a numbers advantage, or Antonio Gibson or Chris Rodriguez? Or do you want Sam Howell having to make a throw under pressure? I want that. Yeah. At least I do right now. By November, maybe I'm like, let's just have him hand it off. But, I mean, if teams are having Mahomes pull that and throw it with a regular basis, what do you think they're going to do to Howell? Like, that's just kind of how RPOs tend to go.
Yeah, and I think that's what Eric Bieniemy is here for. He's here to take some of that pressure off of Sam Howell, and hopefully, his creativity and, all the little nuances that they had in Kansas City will be able to alleviate some of that pressure. Because, again, Sam Howell, this is his second season, his first real offseason handling – hey, Siri. Handling all of this that's coming at him all at one time.
Hey, Siri, say hi to Anthony. Come on. One moment.
Which Anthony?
Anthony Haney.
I'll send this.
Send it. You should be getting a text message shortly that says hi.
And I'm still waiting.
Oh, nope, never mind. Not going to happen.
Happy Friday for me.
Happy Friday for you. Is this the worst segment we've ever done or the best?
I think we should just pivot, to Emmanuel Forbes in the slot so we can finish strong.
Good non-answer. Excellent job. Good work out of you. So people are freaking out because Forbes is getting work in the slot, and I don't think they should. It's pretty simple. The spring is good for cross-training. And Logan and I remember talking about this last year. Like, if I was a coach, I probably wouldn't do it on a day the media was there. And now that they've opened OTAs to fans, like, there's nothing sacred anymore. But, like, I would do a day, or at least a couple periods, where the offense played defense and the defense played offense. I would teach them a very basic something and be like, go out and see. Because it just gives you insight into what the people around you are doing. What are they trying to do to you? What are you trying to do to them? It deepens your understanding of football, right? And so for a defensive back who has got to play off of his inside guy, who's got an outside corner who's got to play off the nickel, sticking him in the nickel so he understands what it's like to play in there, one, gives you a safety net to try to get your best players on the field if there's injuries and you have to make some rotations and substitutions and, whatever. So that's part one. Figure out what your best alignment is. We talk about this a lot more, and it's kind of accepted as a thing on the offensive line. They do a lot more cross-training because you want, at all times, your best 5 on the field. But for DBs, like, you also want your best on the field. And whether that's getting Kendall Fuller in at safety or at outside corner or someone in the slot or this guy there and Buffalo nickel this, dime that. Like, you want to get your best players on the field so you have the best solutions. And having Emmanuel Forbes play some inside corner this time of year gives him that experience to understand what life is like in there, how he can, what he wants out of an outside corner. And then he can go out and play outside corner because he's going to be the best option they have out there because he's really good already as a 170-pound rookie. The fact that he actually is good at it and he's shown an elite level of quickness in there, that's a bonus. That makes me feel good about playing a little bit more man coverage. And if his guy motions into the slot, that you can keep the matchups that you want. If depending, if you want to play him as like, every defense calls it something different, but I think best known as like a star defender where he just travels to wherever the number one receiver is. Like, okay, fine. We're facing Minnesota. He's going to follow around Justin Jefferson. Jefferson lines up in the slot. Forbes going to line up in the slot, and you trust him. It's a way to keep your matchup integrity, and especially if like BSJ is going to wind up as the slot guy. Okay, occasionally he gets to kick back outside. Like there's just I don't think at this time of year there's much negative to it. I think especially for a guy like Forbes who has already shown such an advanced understanding of zone and an advanced understanding of what this defense is asking of him, that you're not like, this is helping, not taking away time he could be spending outside. I mean, it is, but like, that's just, this is more beneficial than if he was struggling to learn outside and you're like, hey man, just let him focus on outside. I think this is good. It's cross training. It's May and now June. I think probably even starting this week at minicamp, he's going to spend more time outside. But there's no harm and there's a lot of help in having this happen now. If he's playing there in the fall, it's because he's their best guy, and that's a different conversation. But I don't really have any qualms about this. And again, like, it's something that might happen in passing situations. They're not going to put him in there when it's first down and 10 and you have a run play and a guard's going to come eat him for lunch.
Exactly.
So if he's playing coverage and he's got the quickness, like, okay, fine, let him inside. It also, like, it opens the bag for what you can do on third down when you want to have these junk coverages and mix guys and, oh God, where's 13? We want to keep an eye on him because he's a ball hawk. Where'd he go? Oh, he's in the slot. Okay, that changes my thought process as a quarterback. It's just, options are good. And if it's, options can be bad when it's not a good option, but generally speaking, the more things you have available to a coordinator as possibilities, good. And if you don't test it out, if you don't practice it, it's not there as an option.
I mean, I think you said it perfectly, to be honest. I don't see the harm in putting him here. And as you already alluded to, it's going to be situational in my mind. I don't think he's a slot corner only. But, a lot of the better wide receivers do line up there. So, in a situation where there is third down, you want to put, Forbes. I'm not saying he is our best corner just yet, but we took him in the first round. Eventually, he's going to mature and hopefully grow into, possibly being our best corner. We want to be able to see him take on those responsibilities as he grows. So, again, there's no harm. There's no foul. Trying it out in OTAs.
Bam. I think you said that very well. Anthony, I think we finished strong.
Yes, sir.
I think we have an answer. It's the best segment we've ever done.
You can listen to...
Hoffman Show on a Friday on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony's hitting me directly in the feels.
I love this song.
I do too. It was my first dance song at my wedding.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So just now you got me all emotional. Get ready.
You need a hug, man.
Talk about the NBA coaching carousel. Monty Williams to Detroit. Frank Vogel to Phoenix. Why did I turn into like an old Southern lady?
I wish I knew.
That makes two of us. And thousands upon listeners all across the DMV going, what is happening to Hoffman in the final hour of a show on Friday? And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everyone everywhere, I don't have any idea. And guess what? We're now at Fridays in the summer. I'd imagine that this won't be the last time you ask that question.
Hey, look, 2 more months of this, man. 2 more.
All right, that's
2
good,
long
Anthony.
months.
I'm out of here. See you. We had a funny moment, group text with our boss earlier this week. I had gotten a pretty large lunch, and I was pretty tired to start the show. And I just go, Ant, I think I'm going to go take a nap. You got the first half hour, right? Which CK thought was funny. I think only because he knew I was joking. But you sent a very funny, who, me? Meme back. But I was talking about it with Rachel, speaking of my wife. I was talking about that. I feel like there are some producers, Anthony, that's actually their dream, is that the host gets disconnected or like gets a flat tire and can't show up for work, and they get to host the show. I feel like that is your nightmare.
That would be a nightmare for me, just because I wouldn't want to do a show by myself. Doing a show I don't know how people talk to themselves, for hours and hours.
You have great
no shot.
producers that help you out along the way.
But yeah, that would have been brutal. That would have been brutal. 3 hours by yourself. Yeah.
I worked with a guy in Dallas, Chuck Cooperstein. Great guy. He's the voice of the Dallas Mavericks. And I remember, and I was super young in my career, so I was doing some producing as well as on-air stuff. And my boss down there, Tom Lee, another great guy, just giving shout-outs today. It's Friday. Free shout-outs. One for you, one for you, one for you. But Tom goes, like, all right, I'm going to have you produce for Chuck tonight. Like, there was a board op and then me. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, what do I got to do? Do I need, get in his ear, give him stuff? He's like, no. Just like screen calls when they come in. Other than that, just sit there and make sure you're kind of paying attention. I was like, okay. He's like, he just needs someone to look at. And I was like, in my head, I was like, that's weird. And then I started doing solo radio, and I get it. Man, there are times like if you don't feel like you're talking to anyone, it's brutal. So like even though I'm obviously talking into a microphone to thousands upon thousands of people who are listening all over the area, all over the country on all of our various digital platforms, the fact that I can like look at another human being, even like today when I'm doing the show remote from my home studio, being able to look at you, Sir Anthony Haney, and be like, I am talking to someone and they are paying attention to me, makes this show so much better than it would be if I was just like, okay. Because like there were days during the pandemic and we hadn't like really, I won't say figured out, but like we didn't really use the video stuff.
Yeah.
And so like we do the show on, like I do the show from home because that's how we did it in the pandemic, and the producer would be in studio, but I couldn't see them. And I was just like sitting in this tiny room feeling like I was talking to no one. I have no idea if any of those shows were any good. Because it's just that feeling of like, am I actually having a conversation? Like, is anybody listening? Or am I just talking to no one? Yeah. So it's tough. And I get it. Chuck Cooperstein, if I ever doubted you, I'm sorry, sir.
You're a funny guy, man.
Trying. All right, we should probably talk about the NBA coaching carousel. So Monty Williams gets paid in Detroit. Super paid. Like one of the highest contracts in the league. And like good for Monty. And the Detroit job's low-key a good job. They got some young talent there. And if Monty can get the best out of a guy like James Wiseman, who did not really develop in Golden State, to go with Cade Cunningham and some of the other young talent they have up there. And Cunningham has been hurt, but his rookie year, he looked like he was legit. Like, going to be a problem. Best, could get into that best player on a title team level tier. Like, he looked like he had that potential in him. I don't know if he's going to get there, but former number 1 overall pick. They've got some other young dudes, and Monty Williams is a great kind of guide coach that can help them grow. You see what he did with a lot of young talent in Phoenix. Obviously, they brought in the right vets, and I think that's an interesting spot to watch. Like, I don't know that Detroit, like, are a bunch of guys going to want to go sign in Detroit? No. Are more going to want to sign there today than they did last week because Monty Williams is there? Hell yeah. But you get the right guys in to kind of be mentors, and that could be a really not like good team next year, but they could be an interesting team next year who's kind of bubbling up like the Magic were this year, where like by the end of the year you're like, oh, Orlando's onto something. I think Detroit could be there, and depending on what kind of leap Cunningham makes, like could they mess around with the play-in game? I think they could. And then if they get the right, they make the right trade, get the right veteran in there a year from now we're talking about a team that's going to bubble up in the Eastern Conference. So that's a fun one to watch. I think that's a great hire, a guy who just knows what it takes to win in this league and can help guide them. Vogel, to replace him, I think is also a fantastic hire. I don't know why the Lakers let him go a couple years ago. I do. A lot of external pressure. It's LA. It's hard. These types of things tend to happen with the Lakers. Expectations are outrageously high. But realistically, man, like all he's done is be a really good X's and O's, like solid coach with teams that play hard, tough defensively. And he helped build that 2020 championship team and form it into what it was. Like he was the coach. Yes, of course, LeBron and AD are the most important things, but like he gave them a defensive structure that they have continued to really work with and continued to be a great defensive team under Darvin Ham, who's also a great coach and deserves all kinds of credit for what they were able to do this year and turning it around from when they were the 13th seed. But like Vogel instituted something in LA that was very, very impressive. And so as he goes to Phoenix and tries to figure out how to piece it together, like he doesn't have to worry about offense, which is part of the reason I like the hire, right? He's a defensive-minded guy. So can he get Durant, Booker, etc. to be all in on that on that end of the floor and take guys like Torrey Craig and have them play kind of that KCP role, get the best out of them, know that the offense is going to generally take care of itself, and then Phoenix is competing for a title next year. I love that move. I like it a lot. I thought firing Monty, okay, it was what it was. I think Monty's a good coach too. And now you've got one team left. Toronto is the last the last team without a coach. Doc Rivers is still available. I think that's an interesting fit there. Do you want Doc Rivers guiding a young Scotty Barnes? I don't think that's a bad fit at all. But I also, if I'm Toronto, would seriously consider going with a younger coach who is like an up-and-comer. Because the interesting thing with how this coaching carousel went, Anthony, is like most of the guys are retreads, which makes sense in a year where I think a lot of good coaches got fired. I don't necessarily think it was like there was a couple where you're like, okay, that might be his last job. But you had a lot of good coaches get let go. And so it makes sense that you're then going to have a lot of them get rehired in other jobs and they just kind of shuffle around. Nick Nurse to Philly, Williams to Detroit, Vogel to Phoenix. Doc might be the odd guy left out here. He'll be fine. He's made a lot of money in his NBA career, especially when he was in LA because he had the team president title. So I think that what that means, though, is there's got to be younger assistants out there, or even guys that aren't, quote unquote young, guys that have been around as coaches. Like Sam Cassell has been up for a bunch of jobs as an assistant. Like eventually he's going to get one somewhere. And you have to wonder if that could be the direction that Toronto is looking.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think Toronto should lean the younger route. But also I wouldn't be opposed to, Doc going there. I think Doc is a guy that can, really restore a quote-unquote winning culture. I just don't know if he's the guy that will get you to the promised land type of thing. I think He's very good at, getting players to come play for him. In Boston, he was able to get KG and Ray Allen to team up with Paul Pierce in L.A. He was able to, you know, really put together a really good Clippers team, and the same with Philly. So I think he can really bring people to the city of Toronto to play for him. But in terms of if your end goal is to, you know, win it all, I don't think he's the guy. So maybe they do go with a younger guy, especially with all the expiring contracts that they have.
Yeah, he's a guy that seems to be able to build a pretty healthy culture. I mean, the Ben Simmons thing aside, I think those Clippers teams, despite the fact that Chris Paul bitched at everyone, they generally got along. Doc was able to management, obviously the Mbutu stuff that he brought to Boston. Harden and Embiid seemed to really get along well. Maxey, and after Nick Nurse is a grinder, and apparently he kind of got on people's nerves in Toronto. So it would be pretty funny if he went to Toronto, because then Philly and Toronto just switch coaches.
Basically,
not basically, literally,
Yeah.
literally. All right. Quick look at what's trending. Come back, wrap up the show. It's Real Things, Real People Said, and Real Microphones next here on the Team 980. It's a Friday. I don't know if you heard that, but it's the weekend. Pretty pumped about it. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app. I will say, Anthony, it was a 4-day week this week. Felt like 6.
Man, who you telling, Craig?
It was a weird week. Really super bizarre, weirdo week. I didn't like it. Next week we'll do our 5 shows, and I hope it feels like 5 as opposed to 4 that felt like 6. All right, we wrap up each and every show, whether it feels like 1, 2, or infinity, with real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be set this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, we were just talking about the NBA coaching carousel, and Nick Nurse had his introductory press conference in Philly yesterday. Canadians, notoriously nice up in Toronto. Philly media is a little more intense. They got straight to the point.
And you got to be better at the end of those 2 months. And
do you want James Harden back?
Pardon me?
Do you want James Harden back?
James Harden's a great player.
That didn't answer the question.
Well, I would say this is that James has a decision to make, and I'd be very happy if he came back.
What I don't understand is why the reporter didn't let him answer the first question. Like, Nick Nurse was seemingly in the middle of an answer to another question. Now, maybe he had asked, do you want James Harden back? And then Nick Nurse gave this long, winding answer, and he just eventually went like, do you want James Harden back? And then he pressed him. But it felt like he was in the middle of an unrelated answer, and then he just cut him off. I was like, I don't care about that answer. Weird.
It was very rude.
Very rude. Have some decorum. Call the civility police. I don't know. Denver, first ever NBA Finals win last night in franchise history. They were celebrating out in the streets of Denver. And here's a live report from 7 News.
It feels like victory. It sounds like victory. It smells like victory, and also legalization. And they're having a great time out here.
I'm not going to lie, Anthony. That one goes on Mount Rushmore.
It's the legalization for me.
That is why this segment was invented. The reason it is called Real Things, Real People Said into Real Microphones is because of clips like this.
It feels like victory. It sounds like victory. It smells like victory, and also legalization. And they're having a great time out here.
Yes, they are. Because of legalization, they can pay for the cleanup because of tax dollars. Yeah! Just a great old time. Have you been to this wasn't a championship celebration. It was a Game 1 celebration outside the arena. Have you been to a championship celebration? Been outside of an arena, either there or at the home arena when they went on the road for a title?
No, when the Nationals won, I was definitely at home. My friend was inside the stadium, though.
Okay.
The Mystics, I was at home. The Capitals, I was at home. I went to the parades, though.
So I was at Capital One when the Caps won. Ooh. They won in Vegas, but I was at the watch party. Yeah. We did a whole bunch of digital stuff. I was walking around with the camera. I had a grown man cry on camera. It was awesome. Yeah, it's a good time. It's chaos. If you're claustrophobic, it ain't for you.
Bet.
But it was a good time. People, it's just you're surrounded by joy. It's the best.
Yeah.
Hey, DC sports teams, let's win more titles. Let's do it. Alex Rodriguez is trying to win a title as an owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he's got a new mentor, and his name is Anthony Edwards.
You've been taking Anthony Edwards to games.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, I think 2 things. I think we both want to be there, right? And people are always asking me, why do you go to the Miami Heat games and Golden State and the Lakers? Well, if we want to build a championship team, a championship culture, you have to go out and do your due diligence. You have to go out and study how the greats are doing it. No one better than guys like Jerry West and Pat Riley. Lucky to have them both as mentors and friends. ask a lot of questions. What makes Golden State special? What makes the Miami culture special? So studying that. And everyone thinks, oh my God, A-Rod is mentoring Anthony Edwards. There might be some truth to that, but I see it the other way around. Anthony Edwards is mentoring Alex, coaching me. Watching him 2 games, the Miami Heat games, I learned more in 2 hours, Evan, than I have my entire life.
Why? What did he
the
tell
nuances. Well, just the nuances. As an example, he said with ball fakes. He goes, never go for ball fakes. Always look at the eyeballs. I said, the eyeballs? He goes, yeah, if they don't look up, it's just a fake.
That's good stuff. Yeah. Although now the secret's out. Good job, A-Rod. You played yourself. Gave away your star player's best secret.
Yep.
Great week. Great guests all week long. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week. BetMGM tonight is next.
The Team 980 is always...